What is up, guys? NRS1 here, bringing you guys my Abyss Actor deck profile for October 2017. Now, one thing I like to do before we start the video is say special thanks to you guys for the guys that like the special. I don't remember the name of the girl, I think, if I remember correctly from the image of the profile. Thank you so much for noting me in my last video of combos that I did something wrong. I really like it and I appreciate it when you guys like put something and just tell me, like, come out of your way and just help me to improve. And unfortunately, I was like, very, very tired that day when I make that combo. I just like, it was like 1 o'clock in my around time. So I came up with it and just, I kind of like confused some things in the middle of the combo. So hopefully when we get the legendary dragon decks, when I get my cards on, I will give you an update to my Odd Eyes build and essentially the new version of the combo. Hopefully, if I'll find out that there are like no mistakes anymore, just because I was really, really tired and I made stupid mistakes. Sorry for that, guys, again. But without further ado, let's get started with the Abyss Actor deck profile. Now, Abyss Actor is basically a very underrated Pendulum deck, but I think during Link format they have a little bit more time to shine because they're mostly relying on themselves and they have ways to recover from the extra deck. There are some cards here that I'm not 100% sure, and some cards that I miss, one card that I miss in the main, and I still missing Wavering Eyes, which is essentially the card that I'm considering bumping out in the deck, like to 2 copies at least. I'm not 100% sure if I need Wavering Eyes in the deck, but without further ado, let's get started and I'll show you what I came up with up to now. Hopefully you can give me helps in the comment down below. It's actually one of my favorite decks, and actually I am preparing for the event that we have in my country, which is essentially, actually not my country, but in my city, essentially like in a city or two next to me, which is going to be a really, really big event when you're just like meeting with a lot of people who love anime and like fantasy and things like that. Like, you could call them the nerds or geeks, whatever you like to call them. But essentially, you're meeting with them, and eventually I'm probably going to sell a lot of my older cards, hopefully, that I don't need for people who like to have them or need them. But regardless, because of that, I actually came up with like a lot of my old stuff, and essentially I look at my stuff and I came up with like at least 5 or 6 deck profiles. Hopefully I will be able to get like all the things that I need, but for now let's get focused on the Abyss Actors. Sorry that I took 3 minutes before we get started, but I just want to note you guys of the upcoming things. Anyway, starting off, you want to run 3 copies of Abyss Actor's Wild Hope, which is your Stratus of the deck when you get destroyed by battle by card effect. In the Scaly, also basically making your other scale 9 like Abyss Actor, but you can only special summon Abyss Actors for the rest of the turn. And essentially, once per turn when you own the field, you gain 100 attack for each Abyss Actor, essentially monster on the field with different names, so essentially it can become at 2200, which is not bad, but mostly you want him for his Stratus effect. And he's based off Cowboy, which is really, really nice. Next up, you want to run triple copies of your Abyss Actors Extras, which is your actually supposed to be extra actors. Basically, what this card, sorry about this card is supposed to do is be your essentially your Wisdom Eye in the deck, a really, really weakened version of Wisdom Eye, but is the Wisdom Eye. If your opponent control monster, you special summon it from the scale, and then you can tribute it, put another scale in, except extras in the scale. You can only use the effect of extras once per turn. And when you do that, you cannot special summon monster for the rest of the turn except Abyss Actors monsters, or activate Abyss Actor extras in your scale, which is something you really need to note. Also, it's a level 1, which is actually really, really important, but we'll get to that in a moment. And then I run 3 copies of Sasiruki, which is your second best level 4 in the deck, and the 3rd best card in my opinion in the deck. Essentially what this card does is protecting your monsters in the scales. In the scale, protecting your monsters from being destroyed by battle by card effect, which is really, really nice, but most of the time I don't use it there. But his monster effect is, basically he cannot be destroyed the first time, and when he destroyed, he special summon a level 4 lower Abyss Actor directly from your deck, which is really awesome. So essentially, he just free protection from attack. So he can special like he can sit in defense, take 2 attacks, you summon this, and you get a search. So it's really, really nice. And when he dies in the Pendulum Scale, you can pop a level 4 or lower monster, which I think like it's really, really stupid. They shouldn't have done it like level 4 monster. Not level 4 monster, any monster, but it's the restriction they put upon, so we need to keep up with it, but essentially the only thing important and mostly it's monster effect. Next up is the card that we got from Battle of Legends Light Revenge, which is actually make the deck a lot more better, which is double copies of Abyss Actor Crouton Razor. Now, Crouton Razor effect is actually really awesome. If it wasn't have that annoying restriction in the scale once per duel, I'll run it at free. But essentially, if you have no monsters, you can special this card from your scale, unfortunately, once per duel. And then when this card is the only monster you control, he becomes 2200, so we get 1100 attack. And then when this card, once per turn, you can basically send from your graveyard an Abyss Script, which is one of your spells for Abyss Actors, and you can add 1 Abyss Actor from your extra deck to your hand. Really awesome because you can add back your Wild Hope if you need them, your extras if you need them, and your Sussy Rookies again if you need them, and any other monster you need. It's really nice to help you flood the graveyard, and it's really not that bad. You just send tons of Abyss Scripts to the graveyard because you have ways to recycle them. Next up, for another 2-offs, you are on double copies of Sturdy and Sturdy, which is basically supposed to be your supporting actor. This guy is supposed to be I think, sidekick, and this, I don't really understand what it's supposed to do, but this is supposed to be your supporting actor. Essentially, he's a nice scale 8. When you Pendulum Summon, you get a level 1 or 8 monster, Abyss Actor monster from your extra deck to your hand. Really nice recovery. And essentially, it's really, really good for your level 1s mostly. Your level 8s, you have a way to summon them because of this guy, because you make your other scale 9, so that's why it's so important. But like your level 1s, it's really, really good for them. And then his monster effect is good for level 8s, because if you control 2 other Abyss Actor in your scales, and you control this card, you contribute it and special summon 1 level 8 or 1 monster from your hand or extra deck. Really awesome being able to just have this one in the scale and have 1 other on the field, getting a recovery because being special summoned by, like, by being special summoned in by pendulum summoning, so we're getting from his pendulum effect, and then when he's on the field, you contribute him, and then get your, for example, extras to your hand, and then special summon your level 8 to the board. So it's really, really awesome. Really, really good, and I love this card. It's really, really helped the deck. You don't need more than 2 though, even though I am considering bumping it up to 3. And then the last monster I run 2 off, from your little monsters essentially, is 2 copies of Funky Chameleon, which is, of course, based on a chameleon. This guy, what it does is essentially your boost in the scales, and he's an opposite of your main boss monster. Not your main boss monster, but your strongest monster in the deck. He's the booster of the deck. You can tribute an Abyss Actors, and target another Abyss Actor and your other monster gain attack equal to it. So it's really, really awesome. But most of the time I don't, this is the effect I most of the time use. His Pendulum effect is the effect I don't use almost no whatsoever, because most of the time I don't even Pendulum Summon this guy. But when he's normal or special summon, you can basically, he gains 300 attack for each Abyss Actor monster on the field, and basically until the end of the turn. So yeah. It essentially can become 21, and then he can basically give your other monster the same attack that he currently has until the end of the turn, but he cannot attack. So essentially, let's just say you have a 30 and Sturdy, and this is 2100, he can become 28. It doesn't really big of a change, but when you have like monsters like Wild Hope, which can by itself become 2200, and you have this, which can make it 33, it's really, really good. And then the last non-boss monster is one Leading Lady, because Leading Lady is the worst one as it is right now because of her effect being destroyed only by opponent card effects or by battle in the monster effect to search your Abyss Scripts, which I think it's really annoying. But she also deals with annoying big monsters, because in the monster and in the scale, when your opponent attack and deal battle damage to you, you can essentially make the monsters that basically attacked you for that battle damage lose the damage you just took. And then her other effect is in the scale, essentially the other effect in the scale, she basically let you to add an Abyss Actor from your extra deck to your hand with attack less or equal to the damage you took. So you can use only one of each. So essentially, one of the other. So essentially, if you're choosing to use like the add effect for hand, be sure to keep up that your opponent monster could be still really big. But that does it for your mini monsters, you can say, for the Abyss Actors, the monsters that actually do the deck what it is. And then we're going on to the bosses. So the first and the most important boss, I think, in the deck is basically triple copies of Evil Heal, because you're level 8. It's really easy to summon now, so it's really nice with 30 and 30. His effect is basically supposed to be the opposite effects of Funky Comedian. In the scale, he's basically even the opposite of Funky Comedian anyway, because he's a scale 1 level 8, and Funky Comedian is level 1 scale 8, and his monster effect in the scale is the same as Funky Comedian, but tributing a monster, your own monster, and target a monster your opponent control, you lose the attack equal to the Abyss Actor monster you tributed. And when this card is normal special summon, your opponent monster lose 1,000 you lose 1,000 attack for each Abyss Actor monster you control until the end of the turn. And if this card destroys an opponent monster by battle, which is actually not a problem for a card like this, 3,000 that can disgrace an opponent monster attack, basically he can set you back the Abyss scripts. So essentially it's really good also with Curtain Raiser, being able to send your Abyss script to the graveyard, special summon this, his attack, and essentially kill your opponent's monster, and you get that Abyss script back. Speaking of your Abyss script, the monsters that work with Abyss script the best is double copies of Abyss Actor Superstar. He's supposedly to be your ace monster, but essentially he's not the best card in the world, as fortunately right now, but he does have nice effects. So in the Pendulum scale, he's basically contributing an Abyss Actor monster, once per turn of course, and then basically gaining an Abyss script directly to your hand, which is really nice recovery. And then it come up quite a lot essentially. And then his monster effect is when you pendulum summon this card, when you normal special summon it, actually not pendulum summon, your opponent's spell, traps, and effects cannot be activated. And so essentially it's really awesome. Once per turn you can set one Abyss script from your deck, directly from your deck to the field, and then send it to the graveyard if you haven't used it, or even if it's still in your field, which is, there is one Abyss Actor continuous spell, but essentially I don't like to search it with this, because like I said, is going to die in the end phase. But that basically does it to your monsters, and that's it for monsters in general in the deck. I decided not to run Maxi and not to run anything else, even not a Gofu, because I don't need a Gofu in this deck. Most of the time I'm going Pendulums, so it doesn't really matter, and my field is focused on Pendulums. And Maxi just not always that good, so like it's good, but it's depending on the matches you go. So essentially, I put it in the side, and I'll show you my side later. But essentially, for your spells, you have 9 spells in the deck, if I remember correctly, and 5 of them is your Abyss script. So let's get to them. One Abyss script of the Rise of the Abyss King, which I don't have more than one, but if I have more than one, I'm probably going to run it more than one. One Fantasy Magic, which is supposed to be a replacement for the second Abyss King, but I still love it, so it's okay-ish. One Ceremony, which is essentially your life recovery. One Abyss Dragon Lair, which is also really nice. And then one your continuous Abyss script, which is Abyss script Abyss-tainment, which is also really nice. So I decided to go with one of each, and I will get to each one of them what they do. Basically, all of them have the effect when they destroyed by an opponent card effect while they're set. They're giving you an effect if you have an Abyss Actor monster in your extra deck. This guy, when he dies, this card, when it dies, it's giving you 2 searches for Abyss script and Abyss Actor monsters by opponent card effect, of course. You need to remember just an opponent card effect, so essentially you can set it, but if your opponent, getting what you're doing, this is not going to work for the deck anymore, unfortunately. This card, when it dies, it essentially just target a card your opponent control on the field, put it on top of the deck. Not the best effect, but still really nice. This, when it dies, you can draw until you have 5. This lets you banish an opponent monster from the extra deck, and this, when it dies, lets you special summon a Pendulum monster from your deck as much as you can. So essentially, Pendulum Abyss Actors, of course. So essentially, this card is really awesome. Then his effect is this effect. When you activate it, you can pop monsters on your side, pop card on the field, up to the number of attack position Abyss Actor monsters with different names you control. Destroy them. If you control a level 7 or higher Abyss Actor monster, your opponent cannot activate card effects and respond to this card activation. So this card is so good with Superstar. This card, when he's activated, he can activate it on a monster. Also this one, when this card, you destroy, not destroy a monster, when you attack a monster and it is not destroyed, you basically bounce it. So it's really, really nice, it's not targeting. This, when you destroy a monster, you essentially, your opponent banish 3 random monsters from their extra deck. Like, not 3 randoms, 3 that he chooses. So it's really, really nice. Then one thing that actually will make those two better, which is a card that we haven't got yet, is Twinkle Little Star. You can target one other Abyss Actor monster you control, essentially. You give him the ability to attack 3 times. So if you attack with Fire or Dragon Lair 3 times, your opponent banish 9 extra deck monsters. And with this, your opponent, if they're not destroyed, bounce 3 monsters. So it's really, really awesome. This card is, like I said, it's the worst one of them, because if he's not destroyed, you bounce it. I think it should have been bounced it anyway, without even being destroyed in the first place. But essentially, this is the worst one, and you can switch it for another Abyss script, Rise of the Abyss King, if you have it. I just don't have it. This card, when he's activated, is giving you 500 life for each Abyss Actor monster you control. Essentially, it can become 3000. Really nice with counter traps if you have them in the deck, which I do when we get into it. And also with 1 card in the extra deck, again, which we'll get into it. And also just survive the game. And this card, up to twice per turn, you can essentially tribute an Abyss Actor monster, target one of the other things, even itself, but target any Abyss Actor, Abyss script card in your graveyard, set it to your field. So essentially, you can, basically, if you have 3 Abyss Actors monsters, you can essentially tribute one of them, get this back, pop 2 cards, then tribute another one of them, get this back, activate on the monster, and essentially can just banish 3 cards from your opponent. Your opponent banish 3 cards from you as extra deck, which is really, really awesome. And that does it for your Abyss scripts. You have only 5, and I think like 5 is the best ratio. But like I said, Fantasy Magic should be taking out, because Abyss King Lair is essentially not Abyss King Lair. Rise of the Abyss King is essentially the best spell, but unfortunately I only got the 1. Regardless, we'll now move on for the 4 stables we have, which are 3 Allure of Darkness for draw power, and then Pot of Riches, which I'm proxying because I haven't got the Legendary Dragons yet, which is another draw power you want. But essentially, I decided to go with draw power. I might actually consider maybe adding a 1-for-1 instead of something else in the future. But for now, like, I don't find anything else useful in the deck. Allure of Darkness because they're all dark, and Pot of Riches because you can fill your extra deck really, really easily. And you don't really care about anything else most of the time except from Pendulum Summoning in the Abyss Actors. So that's actually pretty nice. And that's it for spells. Now we'll move on for traps. The first trap in the deck is the Abyss Actor Trap deck. Is essentially a trap that I'm considering cutting it down to 2, but it is still very, very important. You can basically, if you have Abyss Actors in your 2 Pendulum Zones, you can basically take 2 Abyss Actors monsters in your deck and put them face up in your extra deck. So essentially, if you have scales, you can activate this. But essentially, because your opponent probably going to target your scales, and essentially just extra deck is not that good as it used to be, I am considering cutting it down to 2 because it is searchable, or even down to 1, but it's still really, really nice because of Pot of Riches. So I'm considering cutting it down to 1 and add another Pot of Riches, and then cutting the second one if I want to cut for another one, for whatever, but we'll see how that goes. And then the most important, actually, I think, spell in the deck, trap in the deck, is essentially Double Echo Escalation. Now, a lot of people are going to ask me why I'm saying it's the most important, but it just basically, this deck is already slow and it gives you draw power, and it can also destroy your scales. So when you destroy your scale, which essentially you want most of the time destroy your what it called, Wild Hope, you essentially gain a search and a draw. So it's really, really nice, and you can get really, really easily to your combo pieces. So that's why I love this card. I only run it at 2 though, because it's a harder once per turn. And then the next one card I run, you can cut it and run something else, is Double Pendulum Reborn. I decided to go with Double Pendulum Reborn, essentially because I love this card being able to revive a monster in clutch from the extra deck and the graveyard, which is really, really awesome. And being able to just save your butt most of the times, it's really, really nice. And being able also to push for a game is also pretty, pretty nice. And then the last trap is triple Solemn Strike, which can be one of them warning, but I have the one warning in the deck and another deck, essentially. I think it's my Spiral deck, so essentially I only have one warning anyway. But essentially Strike is also pretty, pretty nice. You just don't want your opponent to play. You don't want traps, I believe, like the Mirror Forces, because the Mirror Forces are nice, but I think like being able to make your opponent not play at all, like just killing their field before they do anything, is the most important thing in the deck, because you want like one turn or two to set your fields. But that does it for my main deck. Now we'll move on to the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we want to run actually for the most important monster, in my opinion, in the extra deck. Actually, not the most important. There is no something important in the extra deck, actually. I don't know why I'm talking about. Anything in the extra deck can be whatever you want, so I decided to go with something funny, which is the Odd Eyes engine, which if you use 2 superstars, you can essentially get an absolute. If it dies, you can get one of those 2 if you need to. So it's actually really, really fun. It's a funny tech of mine. You can be whatever else you want, but I just decided to go with this. Then for your other fusion is Starving Venom, because you need just to tribute 2 level 4 Dark Pendulum monsters, and it's really, really easy, and it can also target cards in the graveyard, which is really, really awesome. One of the Supreme King Dark Rebellion. Again, you need just 2 level 4 Dark Pendulum monsters, and essentially it's really, really good. One normal Dark Pendulum, Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. This one can be cut for something else, but I just don't have anything to think of in the moment. At the moment, I don't thought on anything else, so I run one of this and one of this just to have potential more beaters. And then one Magister Paladin for the search. One Castell and one 101 for the bouncing effects. One Kyra Gorgon to essentially redirect effects that targets, and it's really awesome. Actually, that target one card, not more than one card. And essentially, it's really nice because you can even redirect card your opponent control to target your Wild Hope and get searches, so it's really nice. And then one Wave King Caesar to essentially recover monsters when they die, and essentially it's not the best thing, but when like you do a Pendulum summon and your opponent doing Solemns or whatever, like next turn, and you activate this effect, you can still recover them, so it's really, really nice. So let's say you have this, just to take in the moment, you have this, and you have, for example, Wild Hopes, like you summon 2 Wild Hopes, and both of them die. You can activate this effect before you Pendulum summon, and then during the next turn, you take, they're coming back, but you take 2,000 points of damage. So keep that in mind. It's actually really important to remember. Anyway, I'm actually not 100% sure if this is the best card in the deck, extra deck, and also not sure if the thing that I explained is the correct thing to say. But I think that's how that works. But if not, please correct me, guys, down below, because I don't want to be mistaken. Anyway, the last Xyz monster is Flare Metal, because it's another level, not level, rank A7 that actually can really annoy your opponent. You can run potential rank 8s, but I don't really like to run rank 8s because your Evil Heal already do his job, so you don't need anything else. And then for your Link monsters, you want to run 1 Proxy Dragons for, really nice 2 scales for the sides, even though you most of the time don't need it, but it's for later game when you don't have more resources in your hand. Then 1 Topologic, because essentially I really like it. Essentially being able to just climb up the ladder is really nice. And unfortunately I just skipped over. I just wanted to talk about Decon Talker first, but I just skipped over. But anyway, Decon Talker, because you know why, Decon Talker and Topologic Bomber Dragon just really nice. You could go Firewall Dragon, but I decided to go Topologic because it can attack for game, destroy your opponent's entire board, and have nice decent link markers, so you can essentially summon your Wild Hope, and then summon essentially Sassy Rookies. Other than that, and then the Sassy Rookies will not die, and you still get to pop your opponent's field, and you get a search. So being able to use this with Sassy Rookie is actually really, really good, because you're being able to just, your monsters will not die anyway, and then next turn they get the ability to not be destroyed again. So it's really nice, and that's why I like it more than Decon Talker, but it's totally up to you. And that does it for my extra deck. Now I'll move on to side. Side is always up to you. It's just my side that actually I think the most best at least in my locals and like, you know, the people I play against. So 2 cherries because you have nice targets in your extra deck for your Decon Talker and Proxy Dragon. Can be also be nice to just target your against Pendulum Magicians. Maybe it doesn't really helps, but maybe like something like a Castell can be also nice against your opponent. And then also a Dark Rebellion for a staple, doesn't really matter. But I just saying from the most important ones, those 2 are the most important ones. But if you just want to hit something else, you could hit something else in your extra deck. And most of the time your opponent going to have one of those monsters at least anyway. So yeah, it's really nice to have 2 Ghost Rippers. 2 Ghost Rabbits because it doesn't need any explanations, they're really good. 2 Radiant to be your Kaiji because they're dark and they have the most synergy, and you really don't care so much of a monster that is 28 because of your evil heals and your own boosting effects, so it's okay. 1 Maxi in the side like I said, and then for spells you want to run triple Forbidden Chalice because essentially being able to boost your own monsters or just negate your opponent's monster effect is also really nice. Double Twin Twisters, being able to just essentially how should I say it? Pop back row is actually really good, and sending a monster to the graveyard is not that bad now because we have Pendulum Reborn being able to revive a monster from your graveyard. So essentially, it's not that bad. It's have its own synergy there. And then lastly, for your traps, I run 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier because of my locals, which became a lot of Invoked, which are like a lot of Synchros, Fusions, and Xyz because Paleos, Invoked, Wind Witches, and like other weird variant of stuff. So essentially I decided to go 3-dimensional barriers just to stop them in their tracks, even though that's sometimes not enough, and that because of that I also run 3 Solms in the main. So essentially I just switch those with the Reborn in any like, you know, kind that I want, and depending on the matches I do whatever I need. So essentially that does it for my Abyss Actor deck profile. Hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, subscribe. It's really helped the channel. And essentially, I really like your guys' comments down below to just tell me what you think I done wrong or what you think like you could improve for the deck. So that really help. But also one thing, remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day, guys. Peace.